I have my friend and colleague Andy Storch with us today, and he is a whiz when it comes to books. When I think about marketing my book, I regularly think about him, and we tease him a lot about this, but he's got his poster of his book cover behind him. When I think about marketing a book, I think of Andy Storch, and I think of just how much he puts his book out there to people. So I think you're really going to enjoy hearing from him today. Andy, thanks for being here.
Well, Valerie, thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, you just tease me about that. I've learned a lot from you when it comes to publishing and marketing books. And as much as some people might say, I put my book out there a lot, when it comes to marketing, it's probably never enough.
I think that's probably the case for all of us, and there's a few people, one of our mutual friends that says this on a regular basis, and I need to hear just as much as anybody else or any of my clients. I think I'm the kind of person where I'm so focused on the client work that I tend to forget to do my own stuff, or I get self-conscious and feel like, oh, I'm talking about this too much, when in reality, I know the logical brain of it, I know it's not too much. Um, but we all get in our heads sometimes. So
It's
it,
true. It's whether it's sales or marketing, and I've been running my own business for about 6 years now. I've been in sales longer than that. We always think and creating content and building a personal brand, if you will, for several years now. And we always think, oh, I don't want to post too much or reach out to people too much because it'll be annoying to them or bug them. But the problem is everybody's so busy. They didn't see it the first 3 or 4 times. And so you're more of an expert on marketing than I am, right? What do they say? People need to see something like 7 or 15 times before it really clicks in their head.
I was at a National Speakers Association event a few years ago,
Mhm.
and Meredith Powell, she at one point I think was like the NSA national board president or whatever. So others may know the name, but she was presenting and she said 28 times. And I was like,
Mm.
no way. And I left that meeting and I literally went out and, fact checked to find like, where is this study that shows this? And sure enough, there was a study that said, there needs to be that their study showed 28 touch points before somebody converted to being a customer. Uh,
Yeah.
and I kind of believe that. I mean, 7 touch points, that can happen pretty quickly when you think about like Amazon ads or billboards or this, that, and the other. How many times have we seen maybe a State Farm commercial, while watching a football game before we finally actually pick up the phone to say, oh, I'm going to go get a new quote for my insurance, whatever. It's
Mhm.
probably more than 28 times. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
it's crazy. And yeah, kind of we have to put ourselves out there. No one else is going to do it for us.
Right.
So, 28 times you think somebody needs to see your content, and with algorithms and people's busy schedules, they might see half of those 28 times you put
Yeah.
yourself out there. So you got to be even more consistent than that. Um, but it feels a little weird depending upon your personality. So,
It does, and it's something you kind of got to get into the practice of that. Like, hey, it's a noisy world. If you want people to know
yep,
about your book or your podcast or anything else, you've got to be willing to put it out there. You've got to be able to tell people about it. Same as the work that you do. If you want to be successful in the corporate world or as an entrepreneur, you need to be willing to talk about the work that you're doing to make sure people know about your accomplishments. And it's hard sometimes, but it's part of the process, and that's why people hire you, authors hire you, right? They know that just putting a book out in the world doesn't mean that people are going to read it. That's why a lot of times people say, yeah, it's really hard to write a book, but it's even harder to market the book and get it in front of people. And I got good advice from a mentor when I published my first book in November 2020. So just over 5 years ago, that it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's great to have that great book launch, but you've got to be prepared to keep talking about your book for as long as you're alive if you want people to keep discovering it and
yeah,
buying it, and they will, right? It's great to have that little boost when the book launches, but you want people to keep discovering the book over time. And so I want to keep talking about it. And so to your point, I've got the poster of the book behind me for my Zoom calls. I haven't done that yet for my second book, but I do post about each of them often. I've got podcasts. I share stuff on LinkedIn. And still, I think I don't do it enough. I have more ideas of things I could be doing. I don't want to beat people over the head with it, but at the same time, like if I want to get hired for that work, if I want people to find the book and buy the book, then I've got to keep talking about it. Otherwise, that space will be taken up by somebody else's book.
Right. Yeah. Someone else they'll fill the space with. So why don't you just give people a little bit of background around what do you do? Because you're a speaker, trainer, and then your book has a nice dovetail. Your first book, I should say, has a really nice dovetail. Your second book also kind of is in that same vein, but a little bit different. But why don't you give us a little bit of background around that first book and what you're bringing to the world?
Sure. So I spent many years working in consulting and training and development and traveling around running leadership development workshops and learned a lot about business and leadership and things like that. And in 2016, I got really into personal development and started doing a lot more reading and listening to podcasts like this one and learning as much as I can about the business world and doing a lot of self reflection. And for whatever reason, I decided I really wanted to be an entrepreneur running a business, and I wanted to build something around my strengths. And I realized, and I knew I was good at getting up in front of a room. I had a lot of experience facilitating workshops, and I decided I wanted to be more of a speaker and a trainer running my own thing. And so that eventually turned into me starting my first and my second podcast. I launched a conference with my friend Bennett Phillips back in 2019, and I went on my own in 2020. And along the way, I had an idea to write a book to take all the things I've been learning and put that in a framework that would help people primarily in the corporate world to be more successful and happy in their careers. Because while I really was drawn towards entrepreneurship, I talked to lots of clients about it. Most people have no interest in being an entrepreneur. They just want to feel happy and fulfilled in their career. And I felt like I had a framework for that. And just a side note on that, that you never know where these ideas are going to come from. And it was starting to like build in my head, but I didn't know what it was
Yeah.
until November of 2019. I was being interviewed by our mutual friend Philip Van Dusen for his LinkedIn or his
No
YouTube channel,
way.
and the idea just hit me like a lightning bolt, like in that moment while I was talking to Philip. And I was like, I need to go write a book about this. And so I started 2020 with the vision to write this book. I put the outline together based on two keynotes I'd given in the previous year, one on owning your career, one on preparing for the future. And then I just needed to figure out how to write it, right? And you've written a book. And by the way, I'd always been in awe of people with books. And I remember very distinctly, and my memory's not that good, Valerie, but I remember distinctly when I met you for the first time in San Diego.
Mhm.
And I think it was 2019, and you handed me a copy of your book. And I was like, oh my gosh, she has a book. This is amazing. She must be such an expert on marketing. And turns out that you are. But it was really like, I was just in awe of people with that. And I thought, I hope I can do that one day. And then the idea came to me and I put it together. And I always share this with other authors. The best advice I got was from a mentor named Honore Corridor when I was like, how long is the typical business book? And the advice came back as around 50,000 words. And that seems so intimidating to me. And she said, you don't worry about 50,000 words, just focus on writing 500 words a day for 100 days.
Mhm.
And so that's what I did. I spent 3.5 months writing that book, published it in November 2020. And the whole idea was to build a speaking and training business around that content to teach and inspire people to take ownership of their careers. And so, because it wasn't just about getting people to buy the book, but I really wanted to build a business around it, I was extra focused on marketing that book and marketing that brand. I ordered 1,000 copies of the book when I published it, and I sent those out to like every potential client and influential person in the United States, really around the world, to try to help me in that process. And I'm sure there's lots of things I could have done better, but it did help me go and build that business as a keynote speaker and trainer, which I've been running for the last 5.5 years. And then in 2025, I published my second book, which I co-authored with my friend Mike Kim, called "Own Your Brand, Own Your Career," which is all about building an authentic personal brand that will help you be more successful in your career as well.
Yeah. Well, so I love even though you got like the two books, what I love about those two books, because I kind of had a little bit of a behind the scenes look.
Hmm.
I knew that you were like toying with the idea of doing the second book and then I knew you were working on it and like so I heard a lot about the stuff leading up to it coming live. And what I love is just like the tie-in, even though it's with somebody else, what I think is so fun is that the title is so deeply connected to
Hmm.
your first title. it's almost this chain reaction: own your career, then you own your life, own your brand, own your career. Like it's
And
almost
and
like the chicken
and
before the egg kind of a thing.
yeah,
You
and I want to
know,
give credit to my co-author Mike Kim because we went into that project saying we're going to do this 50-50. I felt like he had a much bigger brand and better experience than I did. He had a book as well called You Are the Brand that had been very successful. And to his credit, he said, yeah, we'll do this 50-50, but we can put your name first. We can name it, own your brand, whatever jives with your brand. I just want to get this out there and help people. And I really appreciated that because A, it was very nice of him to offer to align it more with my brand, but B, I can see how people can come together with an idea to do a book or a project together and then immediately start arguing about whose name's going to be first, what's it going to
mhm.
be called, whose, business is it going to support more. And we never had that trouble. There were other challenges that I can talk about, but we never had trouble with disagreeing on, what the marketing or the branding was going to look like. He was very, kind in that from the very beginning.
Yeah, group projects are really hard. So,
Yeah.
one, I have to commend you for writing one book, but then two books is, you know, two gold stars there for writing a
Yeah.
second book, because I've got some that are still in the works and I just need to get them all, to the finish line. So, kudos for doing that. But then a third gold star for being in a group project there with a co-author. So that's a whole other animal. So yeah, great job. Um, Talk to me a little bit about some of those challenges. Like, what was probably the best part of doing that with a co-author, and like, what was one of the challenges you guys faced, and how'd you work around it?
Yeah, I think the best part of working with a co-author is that you get to leverage different experience and different points of view. In this case, you also get to leverage expertise. And in this case, my co-author Mike is an absolute expert at marketing and branding, and
Yeah,
so I was really excited to partner with him on that. You also get extra ideas and perspective on writing, but you have to be clear on who's doing what by when. So in this case, Mike took the lead on writing the book, and then I reviewed everything and edited before we hired a professional editor to come in at the end. But I will say one of the challenges when you work with someone, you collaborate with somebody, especially if it's 50-50, is there's not really any implicit accountability or anyone in charge to keep moving these along or hold
yeah,
someone accountable. And so you have to be really clear on each person's role and what the plan and the deadline is. But even still, it's hard to really hold people to that. So I would say the biggest challenge is just that we each had our own business and life, aside from this book project. And we would say, oh, we're going to do this, and Mike's going to do one thing and I'm going to do the other thing, and we'll get it done by next month. But then next month comes and it kind of goes by. And
yeah,
sometimes I was waiting on him to do things. He'd disappear for a while, and then he might pop up and do a bunch of stuff and then be waiting on me because I'm busy with some things or I'm on vacation. And so it takes me a couple of weeks to come back and check the stuff that he wants me to look at. And so I think the project took longer than we anticipated, just because life and collaboration, not any big disagreements. We never butted heads on anything. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to work with him. I think it's just a natural thing that's going to happen when you partner or collaborate with somebody, that there'll be um, just some miscommunication or you waiting on them waiting on you. But I'm glad I got to do that. And I think for anyone that is looking to going into doing something like that, it's important to get really clear on roles and responsibilities, plan, deadline, and like how will you hold each other accountable and like keep the project moving forward.
yeah. It's interesting. I'm in the early stages on a joint venture kind of a project with someone, and I'm experiencing similar things. And I think in my mind, it's like, if I was relying on this project to feed my, pay my bills,
Yeah.
by a certain date, I'd be sweating a little bit more, and I'd be like, I don't think I can do this with you. you know?
Right. Yep.
But I think, for me, and maybe it was the same for you, I'm kind of going into that project with a little bit of like, I mean, if this gets off the ground by a certain date, great. That would be ideal. But if it pushes a little bit, I just have a little bit more of a lax perspective on some of those deadlines, because you're totally right. You have
Mm.
all of the, you know, um, you have your own business, you have your own projects. You don't know what the other person has going on in their life. and
Right.
everybody has different work styles. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a different animal when you're kind of having to manage some of that.
Yeah.
It is interesting you said that, like, there had to be somebody who kinda takes charge.
Mhm.
You can't just assume that, "Oh, it's just gonna happen," like,
Right.
there has to be a kinda extra communication that goes into the process.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's important too, it's kind of obvious, but evaluating personalities and saying, yeah, maybe on paper this makes sense because of our expertise going together, but do we actually work well together? And I say that because I had two other partnership experiences on major projects before this book, and one of them was my first conference that I ran with my friend Bennett Phillips. We were like best friends at the time, and it just so happens that our skills were very complementary and we worked so well together. It was really a
Mm,
beautiful partnership that I'll always be grateful that I got a chance to do that with him. Later, a couple of years later, I started a partnership to host a different kind of event with another friend. And we got deep into the planning process. And I realized after about 2 months that I couldn't work with this person. And it was because he doesn't work well with other people. Like he really just needed to be on his own, and
yeah,
so I came back and told him, and I hated to end it, but like, this is not going to work. You need to be
yeah,
doing your own thing, and I need to be doing my own thing. And I'm just glad I had the courage to bring that up and end it before we got too far down the line because I could see it turning into a big disaster. And so it's important to evaluate that, right? Like sometimes you get along really well with people, your skills complement each other. There's no ego involved, and you just jive. And sometimes you butt heads, and you're like, "This is not going to work," and you need to be able to walk away.
yeah. No, agreed. I've never really been a huge personality test kind of person, like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm a 3 on Enneagram, but I haven't taken an official test. Um, but it is interesting. A friend of mine had become trained in the working genius
Mm.
um, methodology or whatever, and he had everybody on his team, including all the contractors, take the test. And I learned. I don't even remember what mine are. Something along the lines of like executor, like I'm good at getting things done and across the finish line and I'm also like, I like to get to action.
Mhm.
And one of the other personality types is dreamer. And this test have you done this test?
I don't think I've done this one, no.
So this one gives you like your working genius, your top
Mhm.
kind of categories where you shine. And then it also kind of will tell you like what your top three frustrations are. Or I don't know if
Mm.
it's your top three, but it's like top frustrations. And so it's like, oh, I really struggle with people who are dreamers
Mm.
on a group project because they will just want to sit and ideate and
Yeah.
analyze, and they'll throw things out there, and I'm sitting here like, okay, if things get thrown out there, my mind immediately goes to how do we get that done?
Right.
I can't just sit and dream very easily because I
Yeah.
go so quickly to like how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
Um and so anyways, I've noticed myself now in group conversations of
Yeah.
projects that I get brought into where I pick up on some of the dreamers in the room
Mhm.
and I'm like, "Oh, that's what's happening right here."
Yeah.
And it really does help, I think, to know yourself well enough to know, oh, working on a book project or an event like you're saying, or,
Yeah.
we're gonna do a podcast together. Like, is that gonna be a working frustration for me?
Mm.
Or is this gonna like, are we gonna gel really well? So
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm a big time dreamer, and I I always
I
it's
think you
always
might
helpful
be
for
too.
me. It's always helpful for I have so many ideas. I'm always dreaming of things. And I had an assistant, Stephanie, who worked for me for 4 years, and she was like my head of operations. And I was so glad to have her because she could put things in action. But I think I drove her crazy because I'd be like, "What about this? Why don't we try this idea?" And I loved working with her because she would give me feedback and be like, "Hey, this does not fit with your business. Like you
Yeah,
need to slow down with this." But I was also thinking when I partnered with Bennett on that conference, we complement each other very well because I was a bit more of the big picture dreamer, but also like the marketing guy, and he was
yeah,
more of the operations, like making everything work behind the scenes. And I love being on stage, and he has no interest in that. And ironically, he does a lot more facilitation and speaking now, but at that time, he didn't want to. And so I still remember like he made all the operations work. I did more of the marketing. And then like the day before the conference, I got sick and I was in bed all day. And I called him and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to open the conference tomorrow morning. You might have to do it." And he was like, "Nope, you're gonna be up there because it's
You're
not
gonna
gonna be
be
me." And I was
you're
like,
gonna be
"Okay."
healthy
And
again.
yeah, and somehow I got better, and like we had a great conference, but it was, yeah, it was really close. But it's just, I agree with you. It's like good to know your own personality, where you might partner well with other people, where you just need help. Like if you have the resources, ability to outsource, delegate, at least hire a virtual assistant. I'm not very detail oriented. And because I run a podcast and have this books and all these things, like things will slip through the cracks unless I have someone who can check stuff. So I've always, budgeted for that to make sure things keep moving along.
Yeah. Well, I think what you just said, and then just with me knowing like, hey, if there's a dreamer in the room, I just have to kind of be aware, that awareness is so powerful of
Yeah.
knowing what are my limitations. I see it with authors all the time. They think they can do XYZ. The reality is they can't, or they don't
Yeah.
know how to do it, or they don't have the budget for that, or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
don't set yourself up for disappointment later. Like
Yeah.
be
You know,
realistic about what help do you need to get it done, or to go in with the right mindset for something.
right. What's funny too is tying it back to writing and launching books is like you need to know what your appetite is for overseeing a process and bringing people together. And even though I'm not detail oriented, I do love coordinating a whole process. And so I've self published both of my books, and I enjoyed hiring the editor and the formatter and bringing the right people together. I didn't do, I knew I wouldn't be very good at doing some of those jobs. I didn't try to do it myself, but hiring the people and bringing it together, planning out and managing the launch. But if you're not going to be able to, or that's not something you're going to be very good at, you rather just focus on the writing and then like doing podcast interviews and talking to some people, like hire, go with a hybrid publisher who coordinates all those things. Hire someone like Valerie who can manage your launch and also coordinate some of the other things like editor and formatter and things like that. Don't try to do it all yourself unless you
Yeah,
feel like I have the fortitude and the aptitude to be the conductor that coordinates everything, because there are a lot of moving pieces involved.
there
And
are.
like I said, I've really enjoyed it. But if I didn't, I would absolutely be hiring someone like you, or, going to a bigger hybrid publisher or something that does this stuff all day long so that things don't fall through the cracks.
Yeah, you really have to. There's so many things that are happening at the same time with the
Hmm.
book process. There's so much that's happening behind the scenes, and then some stuff that's starting to happen more publicly that often happen around the same timeline, depending upon your publishing setup. And some people they can handle that many things on their plate, and then some
Yeah.
people can't. And the sadly, what I see too often is people kind of push the marketing, that's like, oh, well, I've got to get the book in, to print. That's the
Hmm.
top priority. But then they just kind of half-ass the launch, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like they just slap something up, and it's,
Oh,
they
you
could have been
you
so
see it
much
all. You
better.
see it all the time. Like how, because I have a podcast host as well. I get tons of outreach from people, and they're like, "Oh, so and so is the best-selling author of XYZ book," and I go look up and it has like 3 reviews on Amazon. And I'm like, I don't think you put too much marketing into this,
Right.
because that just doesn't look like many people have bought it.
First impressions matter. I was just
Hmm.
having a conversation with someone yesterday about, one of the biggest things I focus on in launches is helping to get those initial reviews. And
Yeah.
you want to get that foundation of reviews because of exactly what you just said. The first impression matters for people. And if
Yep.
they're going to go to your book and scope it out, possibly hit purchase, or decide to hire you, uh 25 5-star reviews versus 3, which one are
Hmm.
you going to pick?
Yeah,
Going to
it's
go
the
with the
social
20.
proof. It's
Yeah, the
absolutely how
social
I
proof.
evaluate how successful a book has been, as well as I go and look and see how many. And if it's less than 15 or 20, I'm like, you either didn't put much effort into the marketing, or it's not a very good book, or I don't know, you just don't have a very big network. But this hasn't, it's not as, it just hasn't been that successful. It's fine. It
Yeah.
may still be serving you and doing what you want it to do. But like you said, first impressions do matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting to see just kind of how much effort some people put in. I know somebody who had over 1,000 sales. First couple days his book was live, walked away with maybe 5 reviews at the
Wow.
end of the first few weeks.
Yeah.
And it was because he couldn't wait. Literally, I have a text from him that says, I just can't wait. I want to get it out today. And I was like, can we please put some strategy into this?
Yeah.
Because I knew
Yeah.
he had a good network. And it's like,
Mm.
yeah, but you gotta like have that prep time. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about like how you guys approached either your joint venture book launch or your own
Mm.
launch. Like, are there any things that you're like, that was one thing that we did that I know I would do again on another book launch, or I know moved the needle for us?
Yeah. So with my first book launch, I followed a playbook that I took an online course and learned everything I could about the process and put together, that early reader team of people to review the book and then help me launch it. By the way, I still remember that, I put it together. You put together an early reader team and ask people to read the book and give feedback and then help you launch it. And it's really generally like a vehicle to just get people to help you launch the book. But I was really impressed. There were, maybe I had 100 or so people on that, which was I was really proud of. And there were 3 or 4 who took that job very seriously and went through the book with a fine tooth comb and came back and gave me feedback and actually found some typos in the book, even though I had paid a lot of money for like a very good editor, but they just can't catch everything, right? And it's like,
Yeah,
this is amazing.
if you're listening here, like your editor is not horrible. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're coming back with like 50 typos, maybe, but like
Yes.
one or two here and there, your editor is not horrible.
Yeah.
It happens with
It's gonna
nearly
happen.
every book. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you're saying that.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. But so I was able to correct those and then launch the book with that launch team. And I knew that people have the best intentions, but they don't always do what they say because they get busy and they forget. And just because someone says, I will buy and leave a review for your book doesn't mean they will.
Right.
So my assistant Stephanie and I, we really followed up with people relentlessly to the point that some people I think actually got annoyed and angry at me because they're like, I've already left a review. This is the 5th time that you've emailed me. But that's how serious I was about it. Like I
Right.
really wanted to make this successful, right? And so it's almost like you almost have to go overboard and you are going to ruffle some feathers, but hopefully people got past it. And by the way, caveat, I know you know this about me because I say this a lot. If you are an author or aspiring author, you're going to publish a book and you're going to ask people for reviews. You can't expect other people to leave reviews for you if you're not doing it for other people. So like I try to be one of the first 5 people to leave a review for a book launch of anyone I know in my network. I will go buy the book, or even if I don't buy the book, and go leave a review. So I'm always doing that to try to support other people because I can't just ask people
Oh,
to do that for me.
such a
And
great.
so I kept doing that, throughout the last few years. But the book was very successful. Another thing I did was I went out to every influential person in my network and asked if they'd endorse the book, and I got like 20 or something like that. Did very well with it, and so I did that again with this last time, and that worked out very well just to get people excited about supporting it. And a lot of those people were happy to support me as I would be to support them.
Yeah.
This time, Mike kind of managed the launch team and the emails and whatnot, and we threw in some resources, but we generally managed it kind of the same, where we sent out an early copy and then we got people to buy the book and help us launch it. But I don't think I was not nearly as relentless because there were 2 of us and it wasn't as well coordinated or managed as when it was just me in with the first one. We didn't put as much effort, I don't think, into really following up with people on the launch or sending the book out or getting it in front of people. But we still have done very well with it. I think we have over 70 reviews at this point, after 4 months, which I'm very
Yeah, that's
proud of,
great.
especially because we didn't put as much effort as it in with the first one. But yeah, the early reader team, lots of communication, getting it out in front of people, asking them to help, and make sure you're also building the karma bank account by helping other people too.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. The Karma Bank account, because, there is something to this where there's a little bit of like a subconscious account, like I don't know what the feeling is, guilt, if you will, maybe, of like, oh, Andy left a review for my book,
Hmm.
or Andy left a testimonial or reviewed me and gave me a recommendation on my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a book because not everybody has a book, but
Right.
you go leave a review for their business or for them on LinkedIn. And then they feel a little bit of like, they feel a little beholden to you, like, oh, I
Hmm.
should pay Andy back,
Yeah.
and again, none of this costs us real money. It's just, time,
Right.
really.
think they call
Um,
it law of reciprocity, right?
but yeah, I love that you mentioned that because leaving reviews for people is one of the like easiest ways you can really support them. And think about the last time you just like proactively were like, oh, I had a great experience at that ice cream shop. I'm going to go leave
Yeah,
a 5-star review. I mean, most
right.
of the time we just eat our ice cream and we go on our merry way.
Yeah, we
And
don't.
so
And
we,
by the way, like I just mentioned that I'm very intentional about going on and leaving reviews for books. And I still forget sometimes. And then I get the third email from the author and I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't done that yet. And I'll go do it. So let that be a reminder that we do have to keep reminding people
yeah.
because they have the intention, but we all get busy. We get distracted. We forget it. It doesn't take that long, but it still takes an effort.
Yeah. I told people it's like, you just never know what anybody has going on in their life. For all you know, they woke up that morning that they were supposed to post their review and their dog
Hmm.
had eaten something that they shouldn't have and they had to rush him to the emergency vet
Yeah.
and sit and wait in the waiting room for hours. And you just have no idea what somebody has happening. And again, they've got good intentions, they just sometimes don't follow through, and it's usually more times than not it's about being busy or getting distracted, interrupted, whatever, not that they don't want to help.
Yeah. Oh, here's
So
another, by the way, another example of complications that come from A, self publishing, and B, partnering with somebody. In that this time we ran into a problem with the launch because we had been going back and forth on some different things with the title, subtitle, getting a barcode. You have to get a barcode, for the back cover
right.
of the book. And I think that I had some in my account previously or asked Mike to buy one, and for whatever reason the wrong barcode got put on the cover of the
Uh-huh.
book. And when I uploaded it to Amazon, it was like in, pending approval purgatory for several days. And we didn't make the launch day. And I couldn't figure out what was going wrong around until I found an email buried from Amazon that said, oh, the barcode didn't match what you put in the
Mhm.
system. And I'm frantically contacting the cover designer and trying to get this changed. And so we ended up getting the paperback out, I think 1 or 2 days later than our original launch date. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. But
Yeah.
that's another example of like, if you're going to self-publish and manage everything yourself, you have to be ready to deal with stuff like that and make sure the details are all correct and they're perfect. And if you're also collaborating with somebody, then you've got to really double check. Okay, what did you put on there? Does this match to this thing? And like I said, that's not my strength. So we ran we ran into that problem. And if that's going to be a problem for you, then hire someone to coordinate that so that it is done right.
Yeah. Well, and that's also an interesting thing because I was telling somebody yesterday, I've seen a lot. I've done 70 plus, pushing 75 bestseller launches that I've managed
Amazing.
myself in the last six
Yep.
years. I've seen a lot of quirky things happen. Almost
Yeah.
every launch, there seems to be something new. And some
Yeah.
of it is like user error of like, the author insists on doing it a certain way. And so you're stuck trying to make it work. And then sometimes you're doing everything right
Hmm.
and everything looks right. The day of the launch, you wake up and all the categories are gone from your book, or the photo is gone from your listing.
Yep.
There's all sorts of like weird things that happen. And so I think that's one of the interesting things that I've just seen time and time again is just the power of like build in a little bit of buffer. Uh,
Hmm.
like be ready before the launch day. Like you can have that book sit on Amazon for a few days extra without
Yep.
telling people about it, and it is fine. People are so
Yeah.
busy, to your point, they are not out like on the edge of their seat waiting for Valerie Morris's next
No, no,
book,
no. Of
you
course not.
know?
Maybe 1 or 2 people, your mom, your biggest
Yeah,
fan, whatever, but otherwise, like, you've gotta keep telling them about it. Oh, another lesson I just thought of too, because we're so biased towards our own way of doing things.
yeah,
I read a lot of books and I love books, but I read mostly on my Kindle. And by the way, we have to have a Kindle and a paperback or a hardback version because people do have different preferences. But I
right.
don't really listen to audiobooks. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't listen to audiobooks. And I procrastinated on getting the audiobook out on both of the books.
I'm guilty
And
too.
right? Yeah. And it's like, whatever, but there's a number of people that would say to me, I'm waiting for the audiobook. I only listen to audiobooks. I don't read actual
Mhm.
books. You're kind of dramatizing what they're saying, but they're basically like, hey, when's the audiobook? I'll read it I'll get it then.
Right.
And I was several months late with the first one, some complications, both with my health and just procrastination. And then with the second one, ran into some problems and we're also late on getting it up there. But it's important to get that done, ideally coordinated with the actual book, because there are a lot of people that only do audiobooks and they don't read physical books.
Yeah, that's an important point. And also a little bit of freedom to know that it happens with most authors, and most authors, I would say, do stagger the launch
Hmm.
just because of logistics. Like,
Yeah,
it's
that's what I'm
quicker.
doing, Valerie. I'm staggering the lunch.
You just gotta spin it a different way. There's the marketing.
That's
There's
all
your
I'm
marketing
doing.
lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I love about that too, and it kinda gives people some freedom, is, like, to say, "Hey, that's okay. That's very normal.
Yeah.
Now you just have another reason to talk to your entire network when the
Yeah.
audiobook launches. You have
Right.
another reason to get in front of people with that you didn't have before. If you release them all at the same time,
Mm.
it would have been fine. It would have been great. Wouldn't have been as great as this. Just a different spin. Well,
Yeah.
Andy, thanks so much for sharing all about, one book, two book, group book. Um, if people want to get either of those books or get more from you, where can they find out? And also, where are you posting daily? I hear you've got a daily podcast now.
This is true. This is true. So both books, Own Your Career, Own Your Life, and Own Your Brand, Own Your Career, are both on Amazon. I actually just started. I've written most of another book, and I just started what I think will be my third book yesterday and wrote on it today. So got to keep going. And once you get it, the first one done, so many ideas. But anyway, both books are on Amazon. I post almost daily on LinkedIn, which is my platform of choice, being more in the corporate B2B space. And I do have two podcasts. One is the Talent Development Hot Seat, which is more about talent development. And then, as you mentioned, I have a podcast called The Andy Storch Show, my name, where I'm publishing daily short episodes, 5 or 6 minutes, with a story and a lesson to help you achieve your goals and live a better life. So check that out, The Andy Storch Show, or you can find more info on my website, andystorch.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Andy. And I can't wait to read book number three. So it's going to be great.
Yes, it will. Thank you, Valerie. Thanks for all your wisdom, your guidance, and support, what you do in this space, and just for having me on and being a great friend and supporter. I'm grateful for our friendship and look forward to talking more in the future.